Psalm 37, verse 4. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Okay, there's several things we can learn from this verse. First, that the psalmist says, delight yourself in the Lord. Okay, and this is really important to just kind of gloss over, because I think a lot of times we ignore all of those positive things. Okay, like delight yourself in the Lord, or have joy in the Lord, or have all these different things that the Bible prescribes for us. We just kind of gloss over it. We don't think and take these things seriously. The Bible says to delight yourself in the Lord. And I think this goes against some of the things that a lot of Christians and a lot of non-Christians, they view Christianity this way too, is that Christianity is very difficult. It's very hard. It's a heavy burden. And I know Christians that feel this way, not just non-Christians that look at Christianity and say, like, why would I want to be a Christian? They're going to take away all my joy, take away all my fun. It's all restricting. It's all a bunch of rules that I have to follow. But I know Christians that feel the same way too. They think that Christian life is very difficult. It's all sacrifice. It's all hard work. It's all of those things. But that's not what I read about in the Bible. Do you know that the Bible talks so much about these positive emotions that are coming out from our relationship with God? This is just one example. Delight yourself in the Lord. The Bible full of descriptions and commands talking about us to have joy in this Christian life. You know how much the Psalms talk about joy? Do you know how much Jesus talks about joy? You know how much Paul talks about joy? In fact, I looked it up. I know how much. At least in the NIV, it says 218 times the Bible talks about having joy. Okay, just to give you some context, when I looked up wisdom, something that we feel like, okay, that's important to have, how many times does wisdom appear in the Bible? 218 times. Now, what's really interesting to me is exact same number. Joy, 218. Wisdom, 218. Do we value wisdom the same as we value joy? We want to have wisdom, but do we want to have joy and pursue that and have that expectation in our Christian life just as much as wisdom? It occurs the same amount. And I thought is that a coincidence? I don't know. But to me, it shows the value of what the Bible says about joy. Delight yourself in the Lord. He doesn't want this to be a heavy yoke. In Matthew 11, he says, my yoke is easy. It's not hard. It's not a heavy load. So if we feel like it's a heavy load, that's because of our own perspective and our own background and our own false views that we're having. That's not Jesus' view. That's not what he says. I'm inviting you to come be yoked together with me, and that yoke is very easy. In fact, you're going to have rest when you're in that. That's what Matthew 11:28 says. The relationship we have with the Lord should be filled with joy. That should be the predominant thing that we're feeling. And it's not all roses and all that. I'm not going to try to paint that kind of picture, but that should be our expectation. That's what we should be striving for. That's what we should be expecting. And when we're not, when the predominant thing is anything but that, we have to examine the way we're thinking. We have to examine what we're expecting. We have to examine what we're thinking this relationship with God is all about. Delight yourself in the Lord. There's no better thing in this life than the Lord. Enjoy him. Enjoy this relationship we have. It's a privilege. We need to enjoy and have joy. That's so important. We need to have joy in the Lord. And we look in this psalm and we can see our desires are not something we have to throw away when we become a Christian. Okay? How do we know that? How do we know that our desires are okay? How do we know that it's not something that is bad or we have to throw that away? Well, look at this psalm. He says, God will give you the desires of your heart. He is not going to give you something that's not aligned with what he wants. God will not give you something that's not in line with what he wants. The fact that the psalmist says that he will give you the desires of your heart shows you that there are some desires that you have that are God-given, that are good, that you need to embrace, that you don't have to throw away. You don't have to sacrifice. You don't have to put that on the shelf and say, no, none of me, just all of you, and I just throw away all my will, all my desires, all my joy, all my things. That's not right. That's not what we see in the Bible. Now, not all of that is from the Lord, and so we do have to have discernment, but I think it's much more than we allow ourselves to think. It's much more than we allow ourselves to hold and expect and view and have that view of God. God is for us. He puts those desires in our heart. I remember I was reading this book with a small group that I was going through, and it was talking about different ways to have interpersonal relationships and stuff like that. And so I remember this book talking about our needs and our wants and desires. Okay, and it's talking about how, and I can totally relate to this, okay, anybody that's had a relationship, you probably relate to this too, is that it's important to express your needs and your wants and your desires, okay, in a relationship. You need to be a powerful person that expresses their needs and desires, okay, and I'm not saying that all women do this, but I really don't like it when women want you to guess. Right? They say, you should know what my want or my need or my desire. How am I supposed to know that? Right? Is always the thing that I would always say. Right? But I think that it's very important to do that. And so it's interesting. This book said one of the things that's helpful for people to care for them is to ask this question. What do you need? Okay, so I started doing that. Right? So all the people in my staff, in my ministry, and in my family, I would ask them this question. What do you need? Do you want to know what I got in response to that every single time? I don't know. I don't know what I need. But thank you for asking that. That's really touching to me. So you could tell that they really appreciated that, but they had no idea. They had no idea. But the same was true with me, right? If someone were asking me, what do you need? I have no idea. And that's with my needs. That's the part I feel okay asking God about. I feel okay asking God about my needs. What about my wants or desires? Do I feel okay asking God about those things? Are those selfish? Right? That's where we have to look at the Psalms. It says, He will give you the desires of your heart that are aligned. You have to see, you can't throw those things away. And so I was on my prayer walk. I was talking to God about this. And I was asking Him about this whole situation of not knowing my desires or my wants or my needs or any of those things. And then He said to me, He was saying, Sam, you keep asking me about my will, and you keep asking me about what's your purpose and your destiny and all those things. And He said, don't you think that if I call you to something, I'm going to put that desire in you? Don't you think if I have a purpose for your life, that I'll put that desire or hunger in your heart? Don't you think I'm smart that way? That if I'm going to call you or to some kind of mission or purpose or destiny, that I'm also going to put that in your heart? That I'm also going to put that desire and hunger in your heart? And I said, yes, Lord. Of course. You are smart that way. All right? You are going to align those things together. That whatever God calls you to do, whatever whatever purpose He has for your life, He's going to put that hunger and desire in your heart. So He said, you need to be aware of your desires, your heart, what's going on inside. And I keep giving the caution, but not all of those is true, but some of that is. And I think, and I imagine for a lot of you, it's more than what's currently happening. You need to ask the Lord about what's going on inside. You need to ask. You need to look at this Psalm 37 that says, delight yourself in the Lord. Give yourself permission. A lot of times we don't even give ourselves permission to feel joyful or to have those things because there's too much to do. Give yourself permission to feel joy and delight in the Lord. And He will honor you. He will point out those desires that are God-given. And you have those. You already have those inside. It's not something you have to create or develop. He's already implanted you the hunger and desire for what He's purposed you, why He created you, why He put you on this earth. He's already put that inside of you. Be aware. Ask Him about it. What is that for me? Help me to be more aware of what's going on inside so that when you want to give it to me, I can receive it. I can recognize it. I can step into it. I can pursue it. I can let those things drive me and help me and direct me in my life. Desires are very important. Our heart is very important.